This is Token by Gabriel Robinson. Token is a tabletop role playing game that is rooted in Trophy. If you're not familiar with Trophy, it's by Jesse Ross. It came out a couple of years ago. Actually, the books are coming out soon for the actual official version. It's a play to lose game where players explore a dark and horrible forest and eventually succumb to their injuries or the corruption of the forest or other horrible things happen to you. Token then takes that kind of concept and brings it to a slightly different framing in which it's a duet game. So it's played between two players, not a GM and a player, but instead two players who are collaboratively telling a story. One of them is the seeker, the person who is entering into the dark and twisted and sort of weird forest. They are escaping something, they're fleeing something, they are seeking something. The other player is the dweller. The dweller is some sort of creature, some being that has been in the forest for some time, that has been changed or twisted by the forest. And they are both linked with one another in some way. And you will play to figure out how they are linked to one another. It's a trophy game, which means your characters really are just a handful of backgrounds and little feats and things like that, skills that your characters have. So you're not going to have a lot of stats or anything like that, but instead you have key identifying features about who you are. So maybe strange powers or features that you have as the dweller, or the skills that you had as the seeker before you left your settlement and ran into the forest, the adjectives essentially that would describe who you are. And that's really all you need in order to do this. And then a buttload of tables. We'll get to those tables in just a second. But how the game basically works is the players go back and forth setting scenes. One of them is exploring the forest and they're taking their time. And then eventually they're going to want to do something. They're either going to want to seek out an answer, learn something from the forest, or they're going to want to face a challenge of some kind that the forest is putting in front of them. You'll notice the forest is something that I'm going to mention a lot. It is sort of the third player in this duet game that neither person is actually playing as, but it is this kind of constant lurking doom that is going to try and push these players together, but also rip them down into the ground. Anytime you do anything in the game that's going to require a roll, you're going to roll two different types of dice, light dice and dark dice. These dice are going to sort of form a not necessarily competing pool with one another, but depending on which die is highest, light or dark, you're going to have various different kinds of outcomes. These outcomes are going to involve you succeeding or failing or succeeding with some sort of complication, the usual range bands we've seen before, but also it's going to involve things like the exchange of tokens or the gaining of things like scars, where your character has fundamentally changed in some way. The forest has scarred them, either physically or in some way that goes beyond what we could possibly see. There's also these tokens that are being exchanged. In fact, the tokens are the whole thing that drives the system. The game is called Token, after all. You see, you go back and forth taking turns, deciding who's setting the scene, rolling dice, seeing what the outcome is, and the game ends in sort of one of two scenarios. One of the players has gathered up 3 tokens, or the forest has gathered up 3 tokens. Technically, you could also fail by getting scarred to death, but that's trophy for you. The trophy, or these tokens, are being passed back and forth as sort of an enticement. The characters are literally leaving these little tokens in the forest for one another. And that's the beautiful thing about Token, is that the game is about one player setting the question and the other person answering it. So even though one person might be in the spotlight in a given moment, both players are telling the story at the same time. There's this wonderful back and forth that's going on between the game. Of course, because it's a trophy game, it's chock full of tables and things like that that you can use to set environments, to understand your character's instinct, to set key important questions for one another. And then on top of that, there's 9 different scenarios written by a bunch of incredible people that you can use to just dive straight in. Don't want to make your own dweller or seeker, or want to get a setting of your own, this book has tons and tons of stuff for you. In fact, there's even rules for doing a solo variant or for playing this with kids who maybe don't want a darker setting. So that's Token, one of my favorite trophy games out there. You should definitely pick up a copy. See ya.